So I think the biggest thing is to not play the game of comparison. It's very easy with social media to get caught up in comparing yourself to others in your industry, others in different spaces, and constantly get caught up in the idea of, oh, I need to do this because this person is doing it, or I need to succeed a certain way because this person is doing it. That's a fool's game. Like there's a lot of stress that I see creators putting on themselves to do things like everyone else is doing them just because we live in this world of noise. But that's a one-way street to burnout. That's a one-way street to blending in as well. Like if you're doing the same thing as everyone else just because you're seeing other people do it, you're going down a path of blending in anyway because you're just doing what everyone else is doing. You have to take a step back, think about your own passion, your own creative outlets, the things that fire you up, the things that you're interested in, and tell those stories.
Welcome to Season 3 of the Amani Experience podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, author, and undercover gamer. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to the Amani Experience podcast.
Welcome to episode 114 of the Amani Experience podcast. For this show, we have Ross Simmonds with us. Ross is a content creator, a content distributor, a speaker, and an author. He's a maven, all things kind of content distribution, everything. Great follow. This is a great interview full of great information. I keep using that word great. Full of lots of informative things that you can do to improve how you produce content and also how you distribute it. 3 of my favorite things about the episode, like I said, he's got amazing ideas just about different platforms that you can use to get your content out there, because it's one thing to create it, but it's the second thing is to get people to pay attention and to discover it. Second, I really enjoyed and respected when he talked about the comparison game and how to try to stay away from that because it's a real thing. And then third, he spoke at length about knowing when it's time to walk away from people. I really enjoyed this interview. You will notice a few kind of technical issues just with the sound, but that's mostly on my end. So he sounds very good. So just pay attention to that. I apologize for that in advance. If you want to reach me, email me, podcast@amaniexperience.com. Make sure to follow us on all the socials at Amani Experience. And don't forget to donate to our Patreon, which is patreon.com/Amani Experience. Thank you very much for listening, and to the show we go. I would like to welcome Ross Simmonds to the Amani Experience podcast. Welcome.
Thanks, Amani. Thanks for having me on. I'm excited to chat with you. This is going to be a blast.
I agree. I'm excited to have you since I saw you at WEC in Toronto.
Yes.
Tell the listeners where you are right now.
Right now I'm in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which is where I'm based in Canada. But typically I'm on the road traveling and doing things with clients or on the road speaking.
Definitely. And where did you grow up?
I grew up in Nova Scotia, so a small community called Preston. It's one of the largest Black communities in Canada. So grew up, born and raised there, and still just an hour outside of there now. Nice.
And you went to St. Mary's University, correct?
I did. I went to St. Mary's SMU. I'm a Husky, born and raised. It's a local university. I went there, studied marketing and HR.
Nice. And tell us, once you graduated from school, what was kind of your first job after graduating school?
Yeah, so right out of school, I worked for the CBC, which in Canada is kind of like your PBS, I believe, down in the US, which is the Public Broadcasting Corporation here. So I worked for the CBC, implementing their social media strategy across the Maritimes, did that, and then very shortly after, I quit and started my own agency, and from there I joined a bigger agency, did that for a while, and then quit again and was my own boss once and for all.
take us back to, first of all, when you were in high school, how did you acquire the nickname Shy Ross?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my nickname growing up was Shy Ross because I was, shy. I didn't really say much. I didn't like to answer questions. When the teacher had questions that they would call upon you to read sections of a book, I would always kind of like hide in my desk. Amongst my friends, we would all be out laughing and having a good time. And I was always the quiet guy in the corner. I would laugh at the jokes, but I wouldn't really be the one to say the joke. I wouldn't be the one to jump in and be very out there and talking. So I always took a back seat in a lot of the things that I did throughout my junior high and even high school years. And then when I graduated from high school, I really came into my own and said, okay, I have to get out of this shyness and start becoming my own person.
Was there anything you did particularly to kind of get out of your shy zone that maybe helps other shy people who are listening?
Yeah, so I believe in this concept of just being comfortable, being uncomfortable. And for me, it really started with, I read this article online that talked about the value of public speaking if you want to do well in business. And I knew that business was calling me, and I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur. And being in Nova Scotia, not having connections outside of the industry, I knew that speaking could help me break into the scene. So as a shy person, public speaking is terrifying. Like, to me, that was like, oh no, what am I doing? There's no way I should do this. So I started to sign up to speak at local events. And by signing up at these local events, I had the opportunity to come out of my comfort zone. So I would go on stage, I'd speak, I'd talk about social media, I'd talk about digital marketing, I'd talk about trends. And at the end of my first talk, I was drenched in sweat. I had a white shirt on, and it was like I was in a wet t-shirt contest. Like, you could see through this shirt. I was sweating so bad. And that was the start of it all. It all started by just signing up and agreeing to get comfortable being uncomfortable, and I got back up to the plate over and over again to speak, and that was something that was a huge challenge in the moment, but it was something that I was able to overcome, and from there kind of move forward with my career. And now I've done talks in front of thousands of people all over the globe, and it all started because I took that one shot back when I was 19 or 20 to speak at a local library conference in a room of like 18 people.
Well done. Get comfortable being uncomfortable. I like it.
Yeah.
We'll move forward. We'll talk about how you had maybe your first entrepreneurial pursuit when you started to sell do-rags to people, and you kind of tripled or quadrupled what they were selling for and started making some profit. Tell us a quick story about that.
Yeah, so I got my first taste of entrepreneurship definitely came from the whole selling of do-rags. So when do-rags first started to hit the market and they were really popular in the 90s, I caught on to this trend, and I was like, all right, I need to figure this out. So my parents take me to a hairdresser salon. My sister's getting all of her hair stuff. I still don't know exactly what she was getting, but it was back to school shopping, so she was getting decked out. And I noticed that they were selling do-rags for the cheap. So I was like, okay, they've got all the different colors of the rainbow. They've got all of these unique do-rags. Nobody knows about this store because it's like for a wholesaler. I need to get a pre-advance of my allowance. So I asked my mom for a pre-advance on my allowance. I bought all the do-rags that this store had. They were only sold for like a toonie or $2 a piece. So I bought all of these do-rags, and I upped the price by triple, and I started to sell them out of my locker. And the kids at school loved them. Being from Canada, we don't have a lot of like access to multicolored do-rags, especially back then. So to have that, I was like a unicorn, and I was a shy guy, so I just had the do-rags in my locker. People would walk by and they'd be like, Ross, I want a red do-rag. And I'd say, okay, let's do this transaction. And it was amazing. I was able to pay for lunches. I would buy all my friends pizza. Like, it was awesome. It was my first hustle. And then the older kids started to catch on, and that business went out of business really quick when they caught on to the scheme. But in the moment, it was my first taste into entrepreneurship for sure.
Excellent. So now if we look at yourself today, how would you summarize yourself in 30 seconds or less?
So I would say I'm an entrepreneur obsessed with content, technology, and good coffee and good people. And that would really be it. And I create things that I think is going to give value to the world with the hope of getting some value back.
Excellent. And what inspired you to really kind of go out on your own and just do your own thing starting a bunch of years ago to now?
Yeah, so I think the key thing for me has always been able to have the maximum amount of control over my own life. I've always been inspired by this idea. I read a quote, I'm not 100% sure who said it, but they defined freedom as being able to wake up in the morning, go to bed at night, and do whatever they want in between. That's always been something that I aspired to and something that I held on to even till this day. And I believe in having that ultimate amount of freedom and control over my calendar. And if I have that, I am really happy. And if I don't, when somebody's telling me that I need to do certain things from 9 to 5, then Ross gets anxious and starts to quit jobs, as we know from my history.
Yeah, we don't want you to get anxious.
Exactly.
In your opinion, what is important for creative professionals such as yourself or myself to succeed in today's business environment?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing is to not play the game of comparison. It's very easy with social media to get caught up in comparing yourself to others in your industry, others in different spaces, and constantly get caught up in the idea of, oh, I need to do this because this person is doing it, or I need to succeed a certain way because this person is doing it. That's a fool's game. Like there's a lot of stress that I see creators putting on themselves to do things like everyone else is doing them just because we live in this world of noise. But that's a one-way street to burnout. That's a one-way street to blending in as well. Like if you're doing the same thing as everyone else just because you're seeing other people do it, you're going down a path of blending in anyway because you're just doing what everyone else is doing. You have to take a step back. Think about your own passion, your own creative outlets, the things that fire you up, the things that you're interested in, and tell those stories. Tell the stories that are relevant to you. Create the artwork that is going to resonate with your audience, the people who you want to connect with. Don't worry so much about what other people are doing. And also keep in mind the fact that if you started your journey down a path of creation recently, you shouldn't be comparing yourself to somebody who started their journey 25 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago. You're at a different point, and that's okay. I think it's very easy to get caught up in this comparison game, but it is so important for all of us to run our own race and keep in mind, like, it's important to take inspiration from others and use that to fuel you, but you shouldn't look at that others and use that as like jealousy and allow it to kind of stifle your own creativity and progress, if anything at all.
When do you feel was the turning point of your career? When did you realize, okay, this is working, I'm all in, it's go time?
So there was two key pivotal moments for me. The first moment had to be being fresh out of school, presenting my thoughts on social media to the CBC and getting amazing reviews from them. And that to me triggered, wow, I'm only like 19, 20, and these folks are really finding value in the work that I'm doing. This is something that other people probably want as well. There's a real opportunity here for me to own this space because it's still relatively new and start taking this to others. The second pivotal moment for me was when I quit my job in the 9 to 5 and I was able to get a client pretty much right away. That triggered the insight to me, wow, this is probably going to work, and it's been go ever since then.
I know you have a lot of content out there. You share many great tips about the side hustle.
Appreciate it.
If someone met you today and was talking about getting their side hustle started, what advice would you give them?
So the first piece of advice that I always give folks when it comes to starting a side hustle is to start first and foremost by looking at their calendar and understanding what it is that they're doing today that they can stop doing so they can make time for it. Once they've done that and they've figured out, okay, yes, I do have time for it, you need to be able to say, okay, do I have 2 hours every night? Do I have 2 hours every week? What does that look like? Once you have established clearly, this is how much time I have, you have to start thinking about the service or the solution that you're going to be offering people. A lot of us get caught up in this idea of trying to create the next Facebook. That's not what you need to start with your side hustle. Your side hustle could be as simple as offering people local tours that are coming to your city and listing something on TripAdvisor. A side hustle could be driving an Uber. A side hustle could be launching a blog where you're talking about fantasy sports or talking about music, whatever that may be. A side hustle just needs to be something that can make you money on the side and that you can manage with the extra time that you have outside of your 9 to 5.
From the beginning of your career to now, what has been the biggest shift in kind of the gig economy that you've witnessed?
Yeah, so I think the biggest shift has been the mobile phones. Like mobile has, without question, changed everything. It was easy before to go on sites like Craigslist and find jobs with ease, but you had to do that on a desktop. Now all you need is a phone, and if you have that, you can essentially get connected to people all over the world, offer a service, and get paid also through your phone. You don't need advanced technology anymore to offer a service, to get paid, to promote yourself, to get in front of people. All you need is a phone. You can start sliding in DMs via Instagram, asking people if they need help with their new home that they bought. There's so many opportunities that exist now just because of these devices that I don't think there's any reason why you can't take advantage of it. And again, keep in mind, when I think of the gig economy, I'm not solely thinking about using Uber, Lyft, TaskRabbit, all of these services. I'm just thinking about, as an individual, you can offer gigs and you can create a gig for yourself. Like if you are a musician, for example, you don't necessarily need to rely on an app to start booking yourself gigs. You can spend time on a phone in an hour messaging people who are event planners and try to set yourself up for the future, and book yourself some gigs. Like that's the gig economy in my mind, less of solely focused on the marketplace apps and more focused on the opportunities that exist if you're willing to hustle.
Absolutely, hustle. That's the key right there.
That's it.
Why do you love what you do?
I think I love what I do because I think it comes back to, so when I was a kid, my dad pushed a lot of art on me. We created things all the time, whether it was with paper mache or painting or drawing. We spent a lot of time just doing artwork. And for me, I view my work as art. It's the idea of taking nothing and creating something that it gets me excited. It's truly what lights me up in the morning. It gets me up every day to know that if I open up my laptop, I have the opportunity to create something that the world has never seen yet because it's coming from me. That fires me up every day. To create video content, to create written content, to create new websites, new apps, new products, new services, whatever it may be. I find the creation process to be an outlet. So my work isn't work. It's me creating art, which I love.
Well done. Well done. On the flip side, what is something that scares you?
So I think the biggest thing that scares me today would probably be just so I'm a new dad. And I think for me, thank you, appreciate it. The biggest thing that scares me is that there's definitely that fear of not knowing how to, like, every father knows, like, we're all winging it, right? Like, everybody's winging it. Nobody knows what they're doing. You're just going with the flow. So my biggest fear is that at the end of all of it, somewhere along the lines, my daughter looks at me and is like, Dad, you sucked. Like, that wasn't good. That's my only fear. Like, nothing else to me is scary. I just want to be able to be a good dad and provide for my family. That's really my only fear. And if I can do that well, if at the end of the day, when I take my final breath, my daughter is there, my future kids, if we have more, are like, I had a great dad, I'm good. Like, I am so good. I don't care about anything else other than that.
Based on how well you hustle and how much work you put into your business, I have a feeling you're going to be a great dad as well. You're going to hustle and research your way and make it happen.
That's true.
So I'm not worried about you.
I appreciate it. I appreciate that.
Definitely. Now, the industry that you're in, whether it be content creation, social media, speaking, it's very crowded. I'm curious to hear your answer to this question because I see a lot of speakers talk on this subject. But when I walked into your session at WUC, I had to pause, pull out my notebook right away because you were dropping some knowledge.
Appreciate it.
You know, that I was like, oh, this is different and it's good.
Right.
In your opinion, how do you set yourself apart from the competition?
Yeah, so I think the biggest thing that I do that differentiates myself from the competition is the fact that I stay in it, right? Like, a lot of people build their career, build their companies, and they get out of the weeds. They don't create anymore. They build their career by creating. Once they've built their career, they walk away and they just take like a strategy role. I'm still in it. Like, I'm still creating content. There's nothing better than writing a post still to me. Like, I love when I have time to be on a plane and no distractions and I can write a post and just think. Like, there's nothing better to me than being able to be in it, strategizing with the team on a new campaign and actually being in it, executing. I love that. I think a lot of people still preach and talk about philosophies that were relevant when they were in it. And for me, I stay in it so I can still talk about what's relevant today with the industry and what is happening right now. So I think that's one of the biggest differentiators, is that I try to stay as close to the work as I can. And by doing so, I can apply insights that are applicable today with the insights that I had in the past to bring together a great concept and something that people will resonate with. Another thing that a lot of others in this space overcompensate for is the value of creation and the underutilization of distribution. A lot of people think, oh, it's all about creation, just build, call it a day. But what they don't realize is that if a tree falls down in the woods and nobody's around, and it doesn't make a sound, right? The same thing works with content. If you create a piece of content, if you create a piece of art, if you create a story and you put it out there to the world and no one sees it, it doesn't matter. You have to ensure that that content that you're developing is actually reaching the right people. And I think that a lot of people have a disconnect still on the importance of distribution in the marketing process.
Well, that kind of leads to my next question, because there was two kind of sections and platforms you mentioned that people don't really talk about in that social media space. The first one was Medium, and the second one was Reddit. Right. So why are those two really important to your content distribution strategy? Because if I remember correctly, your analogy wasn't it cream? Content rules everything around me.
Yeah. Content rules everything around me is the idea that everyone has preached for years, and I think we have to shift that to dream, where distribution rules everything around me. Shout out to Wu-Tang again for the creation of
Love
cream.
That. Love that.
So when it comes to Medium.com and Reddit, what I love about these platforms is that they already have a pre-existing network. So people are already using Medium.com right now while we're talking, reading content, consuming it, and spending time there. If you are creating content on a third-party platform, such as your own website, and then you take that content and you distribute it through Medium, you have the opportunity to get your content in front of an already existing and engaged audience. It's the same approach that a musician would have taken back in the day, and still to this day, really. Like if you create an album or a music video and you got featured on MTV back in the day, you were set. Like you were going to have the opportunity to take off. The same thing works today with sites like Medium.com. If you are writing a blog and you have no readers, submit it to Medium, let them be your MTV, let them be your BET, and let them spread your story and get you in front of the masses. The same exact thing works in Reddit. If you are trying to connect with a specific niche, a specific community, use them as being your platform. There's so many people who are great home cooks, but imagine if that home cook had a TV show on Home and Garden. They'd have an opportunity to take off. So if you have a YouTube channel where you're talking about cooking, you go into a subreddit that is about cooking and you see that content into there, because Reddit, Medium, Facebook, all of these different communities, those are the modern day versions of MTV, BET, Home and Garden, CBC, CTV, etc. And you just need to take that content that you can create and then distribute it to the audiences that are already there.
Agreed. Excellent strategy. I've tried to use that. Medium's high on my list to do. I actually have a post that went out yesterday that I'm going to put up on Medium.
Nice. That's awesome.
I've been sharing that with my students. Both I teach at Cal State Fullerton as well as my podcast students as well, because it really hit home, and so I appreciate you sharing that.
Thanks, Amani. Appreciate that.
Of course. Now, how has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Good question. So besides the failure of sweating in front of all of those people when I spoke, that's one of my favorite failures. But I think another failure that kind of stung in the moment but has been a great lesson was early on in my career. I started a company that didn't go well. It was breaking even month after month. It was going decently, but it didn't take off. It was called Dreamer, where we took people out to do these amazing adventures where we did skydiving, rock climbing, a bunch of cool things. And it didn't work. Like, it just didn't work from a financial standpoint, but it was an amazing, fun project to run. And in those months, I learned so much around how to be a leader, how to coordinate things. I learned about finances for a business. I learned about outreach to third parties. I learned about cold outreach. I learned so much. And I think that that's one of the reasons why I never stopped experimenting, was because of that experience of failure leading to lessons. And all of the lessons that I gained from that failure are essentially the foundation that I've been able to build my career upon ever since. And I think every failed experiment, every failed project that I go through acts as another stepping stone for me to learn from and then build on top of. So a lot of people fail and they allow it to be fatal. I think the key is to fail and then keep on failing and keep on failing. You have to be willing to take those big swings and use those big swings to inform you for even bigger swings down the road.
Exactly. What was maybe the most valuable lesson you learned from your dreamer experience?
So I'd say the biggest lesson that I gained from the dreamer experience had to be the importance of prioritizing and focusing on getting the right people on the bus. And when I say getting the right people on the bus, it means creating a team around you that are exactly who you need to execute today, not necessarily who you need to execute tomorrow. It's easy to get caught up in the idea of, oh, okay, in 10 years we need a finance person, so let's bring in a finance person now. No, if you just need to start, then you need the people who are going to help you start. You might not need a CFO right away. You might not need even business cards right away. Like, there were so many things that I learned in that process around getting the right people on the bus early on and even doing the right things early on that it offered a lot of clarity, especially when it comes to like starting a new business. If somebody's starting a side hustle, we were talking about this earlier, it's easy to get caught up in this idea of, oh, we need to spend a bunch of money on business cards. We need to spend a bunch of money building out a website for this new side project, all of these different things. In reality, all you need to do is get a customer. Like, that's the thing that you need to do. You need to get money in the door. So pick up the phone, start sending out emails, schedule your calls, slide in the DM, get somebody to say, yes, I'm interested. You don't need headshots. You don't need any of that right away. You just need to start reaching out and getting a customer. So I think the dreamer experience taught me prioritization of tasks as well as the importance of getting the right people on the door, on the bus.
Valuable lessons for sure. As you get more success, you're speaking all over the world, so you have people following. You've written numerous books.
Yeah.
You also acquire critics or haters, as we like to call them in the hip-hop world. Yeah. How do you handle your haters?
I love the haters. They're motivators is always the rhyme, right? Like, I use my haters as motivators. So I think, I forget, I always mess up who it was who sang this song, but somebody had a song called Kill 'Em With Kindness, and I strongly believe in that. Like, if somebody's going to drop a nasty comment on a YouTube video, if somebody drops a nasty comment on Twitter, I will kill them with kindness, and it will be over the top. I will say, thank you so much. I really appreciate your feedback. I'm so sorry you felt that way. Hopefully you'll subscribe and you'll be able to find some more value in the future. And oftentimes, you know what happens? They're so surprised that there's a real human on the other end of that keyboard, because people think that the internet's just pixels and, oh, I can throw shade at this person on the internet. It's just a internet person. No, there's real people behind the keyboard. So if you can come back with kindness, people get humble real quick, and they start to come back with you with a little bit more humility, and oftentimes apologies for the couple swear words they threw in their hate.
I love that. Kill it with kindness.
That's it.
Tell us about the darkest time of your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Yeah, good question. So a few years ago, my grandfather passed away, and that sucked. He was, no worries, he was a pivotal part of my entrepreneurial journey. He was the first person I ever met that was an entrepreneur. He ran a paving company. He used to take me and all my cousins out, and we would sell Christmas wreaths at Christmas, door to door, just selling to people around the neighborhood. And he never got a chance to see me become the success that I knew I was going to be. So that sucked. And it was very sad to know that at the point when he passed, that I was just starting, and I knew, like, I'm going to make him proud, and I knew then that he was proud of me, but I could only imagine what he would be thinking now if he saw what I was able to do to kind of come from his humble beginnings and to see, like, the hustle that he had translate down generation to generation into me and create the life I've established. It would be pretty cool. So for me, the biggest lesson out of it is I still like to think that the ripple effect that he had on me is the same ripple effect that I can have on others for years to come. And that is the biggest lesson. It's like, regardless of whether or not he was able to see it with his eyes, the fact that he's in me and now he's in my daughter and the generations to come, it's kind of cool to know that you can have a lasting impact that does go on for generations.
Definitely. Thanks for sharing that. that kind of is a great segue to our next question. I'm wondering if you have a different answer, but the next question is, who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Right. So my parents would definitely still be the most influential. My parents are a yin and yang. One side, they push aggressive with education. So my mom was huge into education, educate. And my dad was huge into social community, stay connected to your community, never forget where you come from, et cetera, et cetera. So it was an awesome household to be raised in. My parents did a lot for me, my family, and there's no question that they were my role models, and I got a bit of both of them. So one of the cool things I do with my company is that I give all of the team members paid vacation to actually volunteer their time in the community. And I think that comes from my upbringing around the importance of giving back. So I push my team on a regular basis to volunteer their time, and I will pay them to go and do it to community groups that are aligned with their own passions and their own interests. And I think that came from my parents in many ways. And then in addition, I think my mom's hustle just spun off on me to the next degree, where she still grinds like it's crazy. I tell her to slow down, but you can't tell her nothing.
No. Like people can't tell you to slow down either.
Yeah, that's true. So it is what it is. I don't fall far from the tree.
Yeah, this is true. Excellent. What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
I think the one thing I find very easy to do is get critiqued. Like, I don't care at all anymore what people say about me. So I'll put out my ideas, I'll share things on social, I'll put out a YouTube video. I have no shame at all when it comes to like my thoughts and my ideas. I'm okay to be wrong in front of people. I'm okay to change my mind. I'm okay to have debates. Like, I love having debates and having someone help me change my mind on something. So I think that's one thing that definitely differentiates me from a lot of others. I have no fear at being told I'm wrong, and I also have no fear in changing my mind. And it's something that I think has been a competitive advantage in many ways. A lot of people get kind of tense when you're challenged or when you are being put out there. To me, bring it. Like, I love being corrected because it just gives me a better opportunity to have clearer thoughts on where I want to go.
It takes a certain level of humility to have that characteristic, so props to you for that.
Appreciate that.
What would you like to be better at?
Ooh, good question. So I think the one thing that I want to be better at would probably be just the idea of focus. I can very quickly go from one idea to the next and go aggressive at it for a short period of time. But then when there's another priority thrown my way, go aggressive at that as well. So I think that for me, the one thing that I would like to get better at is being able to be very crystal clear, focus on one singular task and only that task, rather than constantly shifting through multiple things at once. Another key thing that I would like to get better at is stepping back and not providing answers, and just allowing people to get to their own solutions. So this is more of a management thing, but oftentimes people will ask me a question and I know the answer, so I'll tell them the answer. But what the best leaders do is they ask you more questions to help you just get there. So that's one of the things that I need to start doing more of, is taking a step back and letting people figure things out on their own, rather than being Superman, always trying to come in and just provide them with direction and an answer to the question.
Excellent. Yeah, definitely. I can relate to that 100%. When you were 21, you were still in university, St. Mary's University?
Yeah, I was.
We're going to go back and talk to 21-year-old Ross.
Okay.
Give him advice based on what you know now.
Right.
What advice would you give your 21-year-old self?
So it's funny. My Twitter handle is the coolest cool. And the reason why it's the coolest cool is because I wanted to remind myself of the importance of not always trying to be cool, and it not mattering if you are cool. There's a song from Lupe Fiasco called The Cool, and it's all about that same concept. And I would tell 21-year-old me, don't worry about being cool. It doesn't matter. Like, you don't need to be cool. Just focus on what you're passionate about, which at the time was writing. So I should have just been spending more time doing that. It would have accelerated my career a lot more if I would have just doubled down on it and not have had the fear of being uncool by sharing my content, because I had a blog for years and it was very popular within a small sub community that was already there, but I did no distribution because I wanted to be cool. So I think my advice back to 21-year-old me would be, don't worry about being cool, embrace your geeky side, write that content, share that content, and just go.
Amen. Well done. As you look into the space now, the content creation space, social media space, just marketing in general, what trends are you paying close attention to, and what would you advise people who are in the content game to really focus on? Because you spoke about focus a few minutes ago.
Right.
What should we be keeping our eyes on right now?
So I think, like you're doing with this podcast, anybody who's listening to this, or if you have a video version, like anybody who's watching this, dynamic content is without question taking off. I've built my career on a medium that not a lot of people just in general consume, which is written word. We all think that blog posts, in the content marketing world, we think blog posts are king. But in reality, when you think about the fundamentals of what type of content people consume on a regular basis outside of the geeky world of the internet, it's movies, it's music. So if you can create video content or audio content, that's what's going to connect with the masses. People don't read books as much as they should. Like, I love books. My bookshelf is full. I love books, but most people don't. Most people hate books. That's why audiobooks are taking off. That's why podcasts are taking off. That's why YouTube's taking off, because people want passive content. So if you can create video content, audio content, and you can deliver that to your audience, that's why I've started a YouTube channel. It's because I clued into the fact that the majority of people on their evenings aren't spending time reading a book. They're watching Netflix. So what does that mean? It means that the best way to connect with these people is by creating video content or creating audio content, because I think podcasting is about to take off even more than it already has, solely because data plans are getting cheaper. We can listen to this content on the road while we're on the treadmill. You can turn off Wi-Fi. You can still listen to it. You can listen to it on a plane. You can listen to it in a car. You can listen to it while you're cooking. It doesn't require your eyeballs, so you can passively consume it. Podcast content, video content, it's where everyone needs to be spending time thinking about, because it's going to change the way content is consumed and the way that we as people are staying connected with brands and media companies.
When you meet people who are scared to put themselves on video because they don't like the way they look, or they're scared to put themselves on a podcast because they don't like the sound of their voice,
right,
what advice do you give them to get over that?
I tell them, you know, my nickname was Shy Ross, right? Yes. That's kind of the starting point. And then I just tell them, like, if you're not comfortable with video, that's okay. Turn off the camera and just put together like a character of yourself and have a static image run while you have your audio going. But at the end of the day, you are who you are. Like, get used to the fact that people connect with people and people want to see the person behind the screen. So if you can show yourself even better, it's just going to give people a deeper connection to yourself. Like, pixel to pixel is like flesh to flesh, always priority. Like, if you can go flesh to flesh with someone, that's king. Like, getting to meet you in Toronto, like, that was gold. But pixel to pixel is just as good, or at least it's a little bit closer than just audio or written word, right? So you should strive to have that visual connection to people, because that can inspire people to really feel like they know you better than they actually do.
Exactly. Agreed. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
Well, I still got a lot of lessons still to learn. Like,
we all do.
I like to think I'm still going. So like, it would have to be like, what is the last lesson that I've learned? That's a tough one. I think the biggest lesson that took me the longest time to learn would be, you got to know when to fold them and you have to know when to hold them, right? Like, I've heard that saying all the time, and it requires humility to know when to fold them. But for me, I always feel like I can go a little bit further. I can do this and it will help it. Or I can help this person, they can get there. I can invest more in them and they'll be able to be successful. But sometimes you have to walk away from projects. Sometimes you need to walk away from people. Sometimes you have to make hard decisions. And it's a part of being a leader, right? Like, I think at the end of the day, it's taken me a while to accept the fact that, got to walk away from things that don't serve me, my company, my vision, the goals of the organization. And that was tough, but that's would have been probably the hardest.
I think when you said sometimes you have to walk away from people, I think that's the toughest thing for people to do.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that's the case?
I think it's tough for people because it requires them to accept that they may have made a mistake in the beginning, to like engage with that individual. And I think a lot of times when you spend, it's the same as money, right? Like if you spend a lot of money on something, you're not going to throw that away right away. If you spend a lot of time with somebody, if you spend a lot of time invested in something, it is very difficult to just walk away. We get caught up in this idea of not realizing that a sunk cost, such as time, is gone. There's nothing you can do about it. You've invested that time. The time is gone. You can never get it back. The only thing you can do is ensure that the time that you spend in the future is better optimized. So you have to have that clear cut. And it took me a while to figure that out, that I was making excuses because of the amount of time I spent building something or with something or doing something. And you have to just get to that point where you're willing to walk away and realize it's okay to do so.
Yeah, I agree. Every great person has a sentence. What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ.
Right.
What is your sentence?
So the one sentence that I like to use over and over again is build, ship, learn, decide. So it's not specifically to me, but it's a mantra that I have where build means create something, ship, put it out there to the world, learn how people respond to it, decide whether or not you go forward with it or if you kill that idea and you go on to the next thing. So build, ship, learn, decide is a mantra that I use over and over again, and it's that one saying that I constantly say to the team, and I think people on my team would probably say they've heard a million times, but that's the philosophy and that's the mantra.
Simple and effective. Love it.
Yeah.
What's one new habit you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
Yeah, so I've been really trying to optimize my sleeping habits lately. So right before bed, I turn off computers, I turn off my phone. I have a glass of hot water with apple cider vinegar, some honey, and I drink that. From there, I go into my bedroom. I have a eye mask that I put on that actually has lavender in it. Put that on, and then I go to sleep. So that's been a quick, easy way to help me get into a deeper sleep, and it creates a bit of a habit around it. So I'm not reaching for my phone while I'm in bed. I make sure that my phone's away from my bed, because the worst thing I think you can do is to always be glued to these devices. So instead, I try to kind of differentiate that with my sleep.
I like the lavender eye mask tip.
Yeah.
I might have to try that myself because I struggle with deep sleep, so I might have to try that myself.
Eye mask changed my life. It puts you into nothing but darkness. I travel with it everywhere I go.
Oh, all right. Let me go on Amazon right now. But first, we'll finish the interview. We're really big readers on the podcast. We love books. You love reading. I love reading. We love reading.
Nice.
If there was 1, 2, or 3 books you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books come to mind? So
there's a few. I could geek out on this for a very long time. But I'd say the one book that I really love is E-Myth. Revisited, which is about small business and entrepreneurship. I think that that's a great book that everyone should consider checking out, especially if you're an entrepreneur or if you're trying to create a business. Another interesting book would be How Will You Measure Your Life? So it's by a gentleman by the name of Clayton Christensen. It's the one book that I've gifted to more people than any other, because I think it fundamentally talks about how to ensure that you live a life worth living. And it's not just about business. It's just not about capitalism and making money and things like that. It talks about finding joy in your work, but also finding joy in your family and your life and your loved ones, and making sure that there is meaning at the end of all of this. So when you do take that last breath and you look back at the years that you spent here on Earth, you can say, yeah, that was quite a ride, and I have no regrets. So I strongly recommend Clayton Christensen, How Will You Measure Your Life? It is a book that changed my life, and I think a lot of people would find a lot of value in reading that. We will add those books to the show notes. You're the first person that's mentioned that book, so I'm really curious to research more about it. Thank you for sharing that. No worries. What has been the best advice you have ever received? The best advice that I ever received would probably come from my parents. My dad always used to say, find your allies and embrace your allies. And I think that's key. You have to surround yourself with good people. Good people is all that matters. And if you can surround yourself with good people, good things will happen to you. So find your allies, support your allies. Like those were mantras that were constantly ingrained in me. And I think that's key. It's to find good people, surround yourself with them, and support them as well.
Definitely. We're going to ask you a couple of music questions. In the past, I've read where you said that you think the music industry right now is kind of a Me Too or a copycat kind of industry.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that way?
Because I think a lot of musicians are just creating things that they know are going to be hits based off of what is the hit. So there's a lot of Me Too happening in the music industry where this song is at the top, so I'm going to do something similar. I think that we haven't seen too much innovation until folks like Lil Nas X comes out in the hip-hop space and he's like, okay, I'm going to do a country song. But guess what's going to happen for the next few months? Nothing but country collabs and hip hop. It's like, come on, people, give me something different, right? So I think there's a lot of Me Too happening in the music industry where there could be a lot more innovation. Like technology has never been more unique and interesting than it is today. So I think we need to see more innovation in music, and people need to be willing to collaborate with different industries, but don't just do it because one person did. Do it because you found or you can think of something unique to do with somebody else that's another artist.
Who out there in hip hop or music do you feel is an innovator currently?
Good question. So for me, I go back to I think they're still innovative. Childish Gambino, Donald Glover, I love his work. I love what he's been able to do in the music industry. He was one of the first rappers that I seen have a Tumblr page way back in the day. He had a blog. He still writes code. He does Python. He has these quirky website launches with every album that he creates. And I know there's been talk of him retiring Childish Gambino and solely being Donald Glover, which on its own is kind of innovative. The fact that he has two different personas, like Diddy has done and stuff like that. Like there's a lot of cool things that he's done that I find innovative. But if anything, I like to watch people who are kind of coming up that are like still a little bit less known. So you go to SoundCloud and you start creeping and you start seeing some cool innovative things happening there. Even overseas, like Stormzy, I know he started to cross over into the US and Canada a bit now, but I love what Stormzy's done in the grime scene. There's a lot of cool things happening in different genres, and especially even in Africa. Like I've been on that SoundCloud kick where I'm just like looking at some of the music coming out of Africa. It's going to be interesting. The next few years are going to be wild to see it like truly be a borderless world, right? Like when music starts hitting the number ones from all over, like Gangnam Style was the beginning of it, right? Like, and I think we're going to start seeing artists in the hip hop space from all over start to hit number one, and it's going to be so cool to watch.
I agree. I think, do you have like a Spotify playlist that you put up some of your favorite songs, anything like that you share?
I used to. I used to have a hustle playlist, I called it. Okay, I don't know if it's still available. I definitely haven't uploaded it in a while. But if I do release one, I'll be sure to tweet it out.
Yeah. Don't want to give you any more work, but you know, that could be something fun for you to share.
I like it.
I understand you're an old school Madden on the PS3 or 4 fan, correct?
Yes, I am.
What was your favorite version of Madden? This is a hot topic in the community.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Because I used to be a big player too, tournaments, leagues, everything.
Me too.
I know you're Eagles fan too. I'm sorry, I'm a Washington fan.
Fair. So what year was it when Vince Young was on the cover?
Vince Young.
Was that 08?
There you go.
08 was, or was it or 14? I don't know. I think it was 08. It was so good. I loved Madden that year. That was a good year for Madden. I think it might have been the year like Hit Stick was introduced or something like that.
Yes, there you go.
Yeah, I loved Madden.
Hit Stick, we had the throwing cone, the passing cone, and all that came after that. All that stuff. Right. Exactly. And now Madden is just different. It's just not the same. But
it's not the same. It's because they're over-monetizing
it, right? The microtransactions, and they get the ultimate cards. Exactly.
They're killing it for me. Yeah.
So speaking of being an Eagles fan, if you are at, I think it's Lincoln Field, right?
Yeah,
Lincoln
the
Field.
Link. Yeah.
The Link. boo. But anyways, you're walking out on the field. They introduce Ross is coming to the field. What song is playing as you walk out?
Ooh, good question. So I think it would have to be... this is a great question because I was literally thinking to myself the other day. So I sent her a tweet and it was like, if you could listen to one album for the rest of your life and only that album, what would it be? And I was torn between American Gangster from Jay-Z and the Black Album from Jay-Z. I'm a big Jay-Z fan. And when I go through the playlist, there's so much fire that I don't know what I would come out to. I think I would tell a DJ to come up with a mix of all of my top songs and just come up with something.
Putting me on the spot there. I can do something though. I can do something for you. I'll pick something from those two albums.
I like it.
And we'll put it out there.
Sounds
all
good.
right. So before I ask you the final question, tell the people how they can find you on all the socials.
Right. So the best place to find me is definitely going to be on Twitter or Instagram, The Coolest School, on all of those channels. And definitely check out my website as well, rosssimmons.com. I have a bunch of free content on there, whether it's blog posts or resources, my books, the Hustle Manifesto, How to Escape the 9-to-5. All of that content is available on my site, rosssimmons.com, but definitely don't hesitate to reach out through Twitter, Instagram, or any of the other popular channels. I'd love to get connected to your audience.
Thank you. Well, before I ask you a final question, I just want to say thank you for making time to appear on the show. I know it took us a little while to get our schedules connected, but it was well worth it.
Yeah,
the knowledge that you drop and continue to share, I think you're kind of ahead of the time, so please keep sharing it. I love your expertise. You're very open and you talk to people, and I just really respect and appreciate that. So thank you again.
No worries.
We let our guests leave the show with any last-minute words of wisdom or advice. So I'll say thank you again and allow you to take us home.
Yeah, so Amani, first and foremost, I'm going to say thank you to you for taking the time to request and get me on the show. I really hope your listeners are able to take some value out of this. And if I could leave everyone with any words of advice and wisdom, it would be to simply lean into the idea of trying to create content that can shape culture. Like if you can create content that shapes culture, whether it's inside of the companies that you work at or it's culture as a kind of global scale, then you can do that. And that's kind of what you're doing with this podcast. By creating content, you're shaping the way people think, you're shaping the way that people strive to achieve their dreams, and that on its own is powerful, and everybody's voice can be powerful if you're willing to share it. So Amani, thank you again for having me on. I hope your listeners get a lot of value out of this, and I'm sure we'll be seeing each other soon.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on and share this podcast with anyone who you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon for our next episode.